Hi, it's Ray Grant. It is Monday, December 11th, 2023. It is 9:18 p.m. here in Pittsburgh. And I was just thinking, I'm not sure why I give out the date of the day of the week, because if you're retired like I am, all the days are pretty much the same. When people wish me a good weekend or what have you, it's I have every day off, so it really doesn't one day is as good as the next day. Although one of the things I think ordinary people who actually have to go out and work don't realize is that I actually prefer weekdays that are just normal work days, like Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, and aren't holidays, because that way everybody's basically present and accounted for out in the world. And I don't, if I have to go somewhere, I don't have to worry about any particular traffic patterns. Um, I know when I went out to the airport on Black Friday, and I had to do some into traffic patterns, and I found out I found out that I'm still in transition, unfortunately, but although I don't really have one, but I have a little bit of one. Anyway, I found out from the internet that if you're going to travel on Black Friday, you're better off doing it before noon than between noon and 4 p.m. So that's what I did. Um, anyway, Dave Oranchak has just put up a video on his channel, and I believe it's the first video he's had up there. And let me take a look here. Yeah, the previous video was Let's Crack Historical Ciphers #2, Secret Brazilian Ciphers. I'm sure everybody out there has been was waiting for him to come out with that one. I just find it very hilarious that if you look at Dave's Let's Crack Zodiac, and I'm not gloating about this. I just think it's very interesting that if you go back and you look at the views for Dave's channel, the episode 4 for Let's Crack Zodiac got about 73,000 views. Episode 5, which is where he deciphers Z340, got 2.1 million views. And then wouldn't you think that episode 6 would get, I don't know, maybe a million or half a million or something? Episode 6, he's back down to 100,000 views, okay, which I don't get. It's almost as if people just want to know what the solution was, okay, and they're not that interested in how you arrived at the solution. Then they just move on to whatever the next mystery is. So anyway, Dave, 6 months ago, Dave had did a thing on Brazilian ciphers, and this is the video he just put up 2 days ago. So let's look at it, shall we? Whoops. Try this.
It seemed that the codes and the crimes of this evil genius were destined to remain unsolved.
That's William Shatner.
More than 30 years would pass before software engineer David Oranchak became inspired
I've heard
to
of
take
him.
on the C340 cipher. To try and solve the cipher, David Oranchak teamed up with Australian mathematician Sam Blake and Belgian computer programmer Jarl van Eyck.
The team became kind of this collaboration of people that would run experiments, try out different ideas, come up with computer programs and different kind of specialized tools in order to try out these ideas, or to just run a bunch of keys and try to break the code.
Okay. Um, I assume that that's part of some other program that Dave. I don't think he says anything about it here. Oh, from the Unexplained, season 6, episode 8, Unbreakable Codes. Okay, he does. He does explain where that came from. um. Okay, I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about next because I'd gotten through all of the episodes on the actual crimes of the Zodiac killers, and and then I did a second video on the letters. Um, so I was going to the next chapter of my book starts to talk about the motive, some of which I've already talked about. So I just happened to notice that video on Dave's channel because I watch and listen to Dave's videos a lot. That's usually what I'm listening to. I don't know if other people are like me, but usually when I'm doing laundry or I'm whatever, I'm brushing my teeth or what have you, I will put earphones in the AirPods into my ears, and I'll listen to that while I'm doing whatever I'm doing. By the way, when I brush my teeth, I brush for. I have this ritual where I brush for 2 minutes with an Oral-B pulsar. Then I brush for 2 minutes with a classic rotodent. They're hard to find nowadays. I ran into, I had the same dentist for 50 years. Dr. Carl Flecker Jr. is now retired in 2021. And I ran into a rotodent agent in his office one day, and they sold me on the rotodents. And what's funny is the only place you can get a classic rotodent now is on eBay. Okay, so every now and again when the battery in my rotodent, the rechargeable batteries eventually wear out, and then you have to go get a new. You have to invest in new hardware. So anyway, my to make a long story short, my ritual is the Oral-B pulsar for 2 minutes, the rotodent with the pointed tip for 2 minutes, 1 minute on actually like 120 on the bottom and 40 on top, and then with the rotodent flat brush, 120 on the bottom, 40 on the top. Then I floss, and then I do like the inner the those like inner plaque brushes or whatever you call them. The there's a name for them. I forget what they're called, but anyway, you push them between your teeth, and I usually do that with let's see if I can find those. Anyway, the point is, I guess it takes me longer to brush my teeth than the average person. So as a result of that, I'm usually listening to something while I'm doing it. So more often than not, I'm listening to one or two, maybe two a day's videos. Very often what happens is I'll listen to episode 5, and then the next thing that plays will be episode 6 automatically, or I think I listened to episode 9 in the last day or two, just maybe in preparation for doing a possible video about Dave. Here's the question. Did Dave Oranchak actually solve Z340? Okay, this is, I don't know if I can get the entire. cipher grid on there. I assume I ordered this from Tom. I'm not sure, but anyway, the idea is um, there was a cipher text that the Zodiac killer sent, and I never thought it was worth my while to spend much time even thinking about it, for the simple reason that I felt that the obvious point in sending Z408 was basically to say, I will send you encrypted material, and when you solve it, you will see that it's not worth anything. The answer isn't worth anything. And basically, the message there is that uh, uh, there isn't anything to be found using normal cryptographic methods, and looking for a normal plain text in English. Okay, what you're going to be rewarded for is looking elsewhere in the letters, and maybe also in the crimes, and the other associated events, the phone calls. I've already demonstrated, for example, that if you connect the Lake Herman Road crime scene with the Blue Rock Springs Park crime scene, okay, and you make an angle out of that with the payphone at Springs and Tuolumne, where he made the call to Nancy Slover, what you get is a perfect radian. And I'm not the one who discovered that. It was mentioned in the Case Reopened TV show. You can go watch it yourself if you want. But the point being that there is cryptographic material elsewhere to be found in the Zodiac case. And I just recently pointed up the perfect example of that, which is when I was talking to Roy Conway back in the fall of 1991, when he was a captain at Vallejo PD, and I was talking to George Bayward. But Roy told me, he said, we're talking about the Lake Tahoe card. And let me, just for the sake of clarity here. Lake Tahoe card with message. Okay, there's actually a Wikipedia. There's a Wikipedia page. That's the, I guess, the back of the card, and then there's an address on the front of the card. But there is the punched hole is right there. And Roy Conway told me, he said, you wouldn't believe how many man hours were spent by police agencies. I'm assuming, again, SLTPD, South Lake Tahoe Police, Vallejo Police Department, maybe SFPD, maybe the FBI. I don't know, but there were several. Oh, Douglas County in Nevada, since that's the jurisdiction that's directly across the border. It would be the jurisdiction for the Donna Lass murder, assuming that she was murdered that she was abducted and then and then murdered at the after leaving the Sahara Hotel Casino. Although, since I'm not a lawyer, maybe somebody can clue me in below as to whether the jurisdiction would be, let's say, where she was abducted, which was at the Sahara Hotel Casino, presumably, or at wherever her body was found. So That would be SFPD, wouldn't it? Okay, since we know that her body is buried beside the garage doors on Kearney Street. Just go to Google Maps and Google. You should be able to. Let's do this again. I think if you do like 7-Eleven, Kearney is capital Kearny, Kearny. 7-Eleven Kearney Street, San Francisco. That basically gives you this, which is a traffic picture. Across the street, among other things, is the Garden Chinese restaurant. And actually, 7-Eleven does not give you a good shot. Let's try it again. Let's do 715. $7.15 is a little bit better. Is that the okay? Now are you past the garage doors? No. Okay, well, 715. Just for the hell of it, let me try 719 if that works a little bit better. That's across the street. 719, you can see I don't know if you can see that at all, but there's a tree in the foreground. You can see behind the tree, you can see the garage door entrances. But it would be like on Google Maps, it would be like 719, maybe 721 Kearney Street, Kearny Street, San Francisco. It will take you to where Donna Lass is buried, okay? The burial spot of Donna Lass, okay? So, so that's basically what the police were looking for, okay? By the way, see, if people are going to come out and say Ray Grant is crazy, okay, then you have to like pick your spots and say, well, Ray Grant is crazy for saying that Donna Lass is buried to the left of the garage doors on Kearney Street, in the 700 block of Kearney Street in San Francisco. That's crazy. Well, then all those police agencies were crazy for getting the Lake Tahoe card in the mail. You don't even, well, I guess they identified, Sherwood Morrill identified the writing on the other side, and I think it says Zodiac on the other side, as coming from the Zodiac. But then they assumed, well, this must mean that the Zodiac abducted and murdered Donna Lass, okay? How far away from law enforcement are my own thoughts here, okay? Not very far, okay? They look at that card and they see the punched hole and they say, that must be where she is buried, okay? It's a quasi cryptographic solution, isn't it? Okay? So how crazy is it for somebody like me to say she is buried in a relationship to the south leg of the Mount Diablo Radian, upon which the only benchmark on that south leg is BM64, which is 739 Clay Street. And across the street from that address is Portsmouth Square Park, and the only open ground is adjacent to the garage doors. And presumably, that ground has not been remodeled in any way, although the rest of the park pretty much has. So, but Ed Neal asked that question years ago after I said I think she is buried in Portsmouth Square Park. And Ed Neal said, well, I think the entire park has been remodeled, hasn't it? Okay, but maybe that particular spot hasn't been. Since that angle was completed, everything that they intended to put on that angle, the Lake Herman Road spot, which is above where the north leg is, and the Blue Rock Springs Park spot, which again is above where the north leg is. The body of Shelley Holmboe, which would have been a block or so away from the Mount Diablo meridian. You had the Mount Diablo baseline, the Mount Diablo baseline, the Mount Diablo meridian running vertical to it, and the south leg, which had Paul Stein's body, and there's a subradian off of that, where you would find Robert Salem's body. But the third body on that south leg would be Donna Lass. Okay. And just as I was talking about Joan Webster, I was talking about the two skeletons that are on the Halloween card, being Donna Lass on the cover, Joan Webster inside, because Joan Webster can still move around. And again, these people are identified by name, okay, which means, just as an example, a lot of people might ask, well, why is your YouTube whatever they call that, your handle, it says Ray Grant TZMS. TZMS means the Zodiac Murder Solved. That was the name of my initial book in 1990. So it's Ray Grant TZMS. Why doesn't it just say Ray Grant? Because my name isn't Dave Oranchak, okay? If my name were Dave, let's do some research here, and we will go to Dave Oranchak's. It's at D Oranchak. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately I can't do that with my name. I can't put at R Grant. Why? There are too many Ray Grants out there. So do you get where I'm coming from? Okay, I had a print shop teacher at Taylor Alderdice in 9th grade, and my second week of class, he looked at me while he was explaining something, and he said, "Is the mud starting to clear now?" I must have had a look on my face of recognition where I understood for the first time I understood something he was saying. And he said, "Is the mud starting to clear up now?" So it's the same idea. In other words, you're looking for victims that have particular qualities. You aren't necessarily looking for that specific victim. And then when you find a victim such as Joan Webster, for example, and you do a little reconnaissance and you find out that she's a graduate student in the architecture department at Harvard, and you happen to teach at Harvard at the JFK school, or maybe they selected her before Michael O'Hare maybe Michael O'Hare left the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What the? I don't know what that. I'm having a little bit of a moth problem lately. It's usually where they show up is in my tea. So, I have to drink my tea fast enough that when I look down, I don't see a moth floating on the top of it. Although that does get rid of the moss eventually. It's conceivable that the specific Joan Webster was chosen prior to Michael O'Hare going back to Harvard. We know that he taught at MIT, worked at ADL, and through March of '71, which is when the Sierra Club card was sent, and that's when police agencies were calling Arthur D. Little Associates on Stevenson Street, same street that Robert Salem lived on, and asking about aspects of the Forest Pines condominium because they were looking for the punched hole. Okay, so we know that Michael O'Hare was working there at least in the spring of 1971. He then went to work on the faculty at MIT between 1971 and 1979. In '79, he went to work for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. and worked there until 1981, and at which time he took the job as a lecturer in public policy at the JFK School at Harvard. Okay, and Michael O'Hare's wife was working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I don't know if that's how they met, Deborah Sanderson, but she had to uproot her career when Michael O'Hare suddenly, out of the blue, decided to go from Harvard and Brookline, Massachusetts, living in Brookline, Massachusetts in 1991 to Cal Berkeley's Goldman School, which was a tiny little, dinky little school at the time that he went there. He originally went there in the fall semester of 91, and to live in Berkeley Heights, which he did for 4 years, and then he got another house, I assume a nicer house, or a house that wasn't chosen while he was under duress. Okay, and all of that was a result of a mailing that Ray Grant did to Harvard. Okay, now. Anyway, the trying to remember what I was getting at there. The police agencies were doing cryptography. Basically, they were doing cryptography in the real world. In effect, we think that this punched hole in the Lake Tahoe card indicates where Donald. Remember, okay. This is some Mike Butterfield, if he is watching this, should be paying attention, because he's always accusing me of making all kinds of assumptions and coming to conclusions. Well, the police agencies, when they got the Lake Tahoe card, assumed that it was about Donna Lass and assumed that the punch hole was an indicator of where she was buried. Okay, and that was what they did next, which is they did their best, as Roy Conway pointed out, to locate that particular spot. Okay, so it's not what I'm doing here isn't really anything that is different. It all comes down to what people are willing to admit, that they're willing to accept. Okay, and that's how I know, for example, that Nick Pelling is a jackass. How do I know that? I know it because when I showed Nick Pelling my was it the was the Z340 solution, my own Z340 solution. Remember, this would have been maybe in 2017. So it was several years before, and I did the solution in 2013. And he wouldn't even look. He barely even glanced at it. Okay. You have people. You have the human race, and it's divided up into at least two camps, maybe more camps than that, but at least two camps. And the two camps look like this. You have let me split this. Darn it. Okay. Ugh. I want you to imagine that this is planet Earth. Planet Earth, okay? And a significant percentage of the population apparently believes that this planet is 6,000 years old. In other words, what we read in the Bible is actually the literal truth, okay? And on the other hand, we have people who believe that planet Earth is about 5 billion years old, okay? I would be on this side. Dave Oranchak is on this side, by the way. Not as far as planet Earth goes, but as far as the Zodiac. Well, let's, as long as we're doing that, let's I'm going to set up a straw man here. Let me do it. Let me go all the way with it. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, we have people who believe that the Earth is the Earth and the universe are about 6,000 years old. Okay, and you know, they have like various explanations for the dinosaurs and everything, but they retain the idea that that what it says in the Bible is the literal truth. Okay, and I think probably the majority of people, but the people who have the creationist view are a substantial segment of the population, and they vote. Okay, so ordinarily they wouldn't matter very much. It's those last three words there, and they vote. That's the one that's where we run into a problem. Anyway, I want you now to imagine that we have transferred that partition, if you want to call it. I have a book called Partition, by the way. It's about creating a what's the word for it? It's creating a state which is not brick and mortar. So whatever the name is, whatever we would call that, okay, virtual state, okay, the creation of a virtual state. In other words, most of what we do right now is done virtually. I mean, it might as well be done virtually because we have the gig economy. We have outfits like TaskRabbit. You can hire a personal assistant. You can call Uber. I will probably call Uber tomorrow morning because I'm taking another trip out to the airport. And but all of that is done with through the use of one of these. Okay, and why we're not voting online, I haven't figured out yet. But we're not allowed to. And we're running into we're dealing with a form of government that for some reason we're settling disputes the same way we did over 200 years ago. And here's the question: would you go to a doctor who said, "I'm going to perform a procedure on you, on your eyes or on your genitalia tomorrow, and this procedure was done back in 1789, and we're using the same instruments that they used back then." My guess is you would not show up for that appointment, okay? But for some reason, we're doing things the same way in government. It doesn't make any sense. And one of the problems with an election is when Britain voted on Brexit, okay, and I think the final tally was something like, unfortunately, was something like 52-48. All they did was create a lot of grief for the government, for the population. You're not getting what you think you're getting. But the main problem is, after the election is over, 52% of the population is happy and 48% of the population is unhappy. So how is the election solving anything? Okay? Would you not be better off separating the population into two virtual states, one of which follows the Brexit model. The other is part of the European state, okay, which is a good thing to be, it seems. And they don't even understand what the whole idea. It's like the speech that was given by one of Margaret Thatcher's ministers that basically got her out of office after whatever it was. Was it 13 years? I think she got in 1979, and she was booted out in 92, something like that. Or maybe it was 11 years. 11 years, 12 years, 13 years. But basically, that argument holds today, which is, it's not about us. It's about what the market is doing, and we want to belong to the market. It's kind of like saying, there's this really nice supermarket down on the corner, but I'm boycotting it. Okay, it's not going to matter to the supermarket. It may change your life quite a bit. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. That's something I could have done a video on. Instead, I'm doing a video on Dave Oranchak. Now, that's why, the other thing is, I think Dave and I would make a very good team, because you could add Dave's 25,800 subscribers to my 140 subscribers, and then you'd really have something, right? But anyway, so that doesn't... I'm trying to make a Zodiac symbol. I can't even do that. Try it again. Okay, it sort of looks like this. Okay. And then we have the, on this side, we have the sad little man. And over here, we have, do I want to say, why don't we, instead of saying that, we'll say Team Zodiac, because there are more people than myself believe in that. So we will. Okay, so here's what we've got. Don't worry, Dave, I'll be getting to you shortly. I know you're feeling lonely being off stage there, but don't worry, I'll be getting to you. And let's be clear about one thing. You're watching this video, okay? That's funny. I don't watch all of Dave's videos. I guarantee you he's watching this one. Anyway, here's what you have. You have the sad little man, and you have Team Zodiac, okay? So, and over here you have Ray Grant, and over here you have Dave Oranchak. Now, right immediately, that should tell you this is probably not a very good idea, okay? But this is basically what I'm going to talk about and berate Dave about in this video. And so it's, ooh. I've been beating around the bush here, but it's okay. We'll get to what I want to talk about here. Here is what, let's go to Dave's this is what I listen to every day when I'm brushing my teeth.
my God. So this is a big one. We have a solution for the 340, and it's real. I've been working together with two other codebreakers for a while now. One is named Sam Blake. He's an applied mathematician who lives in Australia and has worked on several interesting problems. The other is named Jarl van Eyck, who's a warehouse operator who lives in Belgium. He's also a very gifted programmer and created excellent code-breaking software called AZ Decrypt, which was inspired by his desire to crack the cipher. Well, Sam became interested in ways to do transpositions or manipulations of the 340.
Okay, here's the thing. There's a guy who posts on Tom's board who calls himself Nicodemus01, and he's kind of like a little jerk. Basically, I referred to the witness who saw Sherry Bates sitting out in front of the quad building around 5:30 or so on the evening when she was murdered. I referred to the student who saw her as a Mexican American student. The reason I referred to him that way is that that's how he's described everywhere. I think he's described that way in Graysmith's book. He is generally described that way anywhere you read about Sherry Bates and they talk about where she was, the places she was last seen. They talk about the sighting of the Mexican American student. And then this jerk, Nicodemus01, after I do the video, goes on Tom's board and says, what does his being a Mexican American have to do with it? Why are you citing his ethnicity? Well, being Mexican American doesn't put you in any ethnic category necessarily. You could be transplanted British, or French or what have you, and be down in and have Mexican citizenship and dual citizenship and United States citizenship, and you wouldn't be Latino necessarily. So it doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with ethnicity. Anyway, the only reason I called him the Mexican American student is that's what everybody else calls him. Okay, and so Nicodemus decides that he's going to start in with the political correctness. I'm not necessarily opposed to political correctness, but I think it's a little ridiculous when you're doing it on a Zodiac Killer message board about the description of a witness. Okay? But anyway, Nicodemus01 is very upset with Dave Oranchak, and what he says is, all Dave did was take Sam Blake's 650,000 possible transpositions of Z340, and then run them through Jarl van Eyck's computer program, AZ Decrypt. Okay. Well, any task that involves 650,000 things that you have to, 650,000 chores that you have to perform, to me sounds like it's, that you're putting in some significant work there. Here's what I'm assuming Dave mentions, and again, Dave is welcome to come forward and object to my characterization. Dave's. I'm willing to debate Dave if Dave would like to debate on YouTube. I would do it on Dave's channel if he wants. Dave can do it on my channel if he wants. We can do it on a neutral ground if he wants. Okay. Of course, Dave's not going to do that. Okay. If I were world famous, I don't think I would necessarily want to have, a retired mailman make me look silly. No, Dave called me a retired letter carrier on his website. Okay. Not that I mind the publicity. I appreciate the publicity. Anyway, just I think Dave's a good guy. I pick on him probably more than anybody else in the Zodiac online community. And the reason for that is I think he is probably the brightest person in the Zodiac online community. And I am trying to get my message across to Dave. And Dave would certainly be an asset to solving this case. Unfortunately, Dave is, Dave, for reasons of his own, is in this camp when he should be over in this camp. Okay? Don't know why. Can't explain it. Anyway, Nicodemus01 comes out and he says, well, Dave didn't do any work on this. I mean, it was Sam Blake's transposition scheme, 650,000 of them. And it's, it's Jarl Van Eyck's computer program that Dave just fed those into. That seems like an awful lot of work to me, frankly. But here's what I'm assuming from what Dave has said. I am assuming Dave did a let me see if we can get this. He did an interview on this German. Oh, here he is. Okay.
Hello, we're here at the.
This is Mark Benecke's official YouTube channel. So.
Even.
All right, here we go.
Hello, we're here at the Hello, we're here at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences meeting, and this is Dave, who cracked the Zodiac killer code. Watch his YouTube videos. You said you are doing more encryptions. Which ones are these going to be in the next years? Probably, because you were not really saying what you're doing.
Well, some of it has to do with them. I've got some stuff for them that I'm looking at.
So crime-related stuff.
Crime-related, yeah, some crime-related ones. And, the remaining two, there's still some interesting ideas that we can try on those, but I'm not too hopeful about those. But I like to keep up with progress in other unsolved mysteries like the Voynich manuscript and things like that.
What's your guess on the Voynich manuscript? Because most Germans think it's just random stuff, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's evidence of at least some kind of systematic process.
Which type of patterns did you see until now? Or won't you?
I don't know. I haven't studied it. I'm kind of watching from a distance and seeing what people are saying about it.
Anyway, during that interview, Dave Oranchak mentions that as far as I can tell, I would have to go. I'm not going to waste your time by playing the whole thing, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just I would have to find the specific point in the interview where he talks about it. But Dave, apparently, every time he fed a transposition scheme into AZ Decrypt, it would then, and I assume there's some way of doing that, assembly line method of doing that where you wouldn't take one at a time, 650,000 possible permutations, to get where you were to get a value each time. But I'm assuming that the program each time, from what Dave says, was giving him a numerical value for, in other words, he feeds a transposition scheme in, and the program says, okay, this converts to about 1% English text. And he does the next one and it says, okay, this converts to about 5% English. Or the plain text looks like, about 5% of the plain text looks like English, okay? And I don't know what the range would be for something like that, but let's say, just for the sake of argument, that the text which were that the transposition schemes which were converting to English the most were converting 25%. Okay, so Dave's getting these numerical values where each time he feeds a transposition scheme into the program. So maybe the top numerical values were 25%, and he got maybe 1 out of 100 um, um, schemes converted to a value which was above 20%, let's say. So if you're doing 650,000 and 650,000 different transposition schemes, and 1 out of 100, let's say, is the program gives you a reading of greater than 20%. Okay, so let's say Dave says, okay, I will work on those. So that would then be 6,500, still a huge number of of uh, possible solutions, where you would look at each one as he does in the video, and it's a little bit like what APHIS does. In real life, I think what APHIS does, instead of doing what it does on TV shows, where you stick a fingerprint into the computer, stick somebody's pinky into the computer, and 2 seconds later, the the face of the suspect, suddenly the one suspect appears, and the program identifies. Of course, something like that did happen with the Night Stalker Ramirez. So, but normally the program would give you a range of, who knows, maybe 100, or let's say 100 different possibilities, and then you would have to manually check each one. So I'm assuming that the process that Dave went through with Z340 was something along those lines. And that the actual solution that he ended up with was had a very high numerical value, and that's, although he doesn't say this, that's what got Dave to start looking for possible English phrases in that, and then to play with it. And I'm assuming Dave said that he used the solve with cribs feature of Ural's program. I assume that he did that multiple times. That when he did it with the eventual solution scheme, that was not the first time he ever did that. That he had been doing that all along and finding, okay, this looks like a sentence or very close to a sentence. Let's crib that part of it and then see if we can solve for the rest of the thing. And when he got his eureka moment, his May 29th, 1989 moment, when I saw the triangle in the copy center, and that the triangle was 12, 22, 146. As soon as I saw the 12 and 22, it's the same thing as when Dave saw That Wasn't Me on the TV show. And he said, okay, I think I've got the solution now. As soon as I saw the 12 and 22, it told me not only did I have the triangle right, but it also meant that all the assumptions that I made leading up to that discovery were correct. In other words, the Zodiacs did intend to create death at each of the triangle points. The BM12 was the burial spot for Joan Webster, which meant that they meant to create some sort of mass murder event at the MIT Tower and at what I originally thought was the Greyhound bus terminal, because that's what Gareth said. It was actually a Liberty Mutual building. It was then just a matter of figuring out, well, what sort of event would be appropriate considering the venue. And it didn't make sense, for example, that someone would go into room 929 of the MIT Tower and decide to launch a sniper event from there because you wouldn't hit anything. It's basically that building is kind of isolated, and the choice of targets from that point would be very small. Whereas if you were launching a sniper event from the rooftop of the Liberty Mutual building, you would be in downtown Boston, and you would have all, just as Charles Whitman had all sorts of potential targets when he did the Texas Tower shooting. It would have been the same thing with Michael O'Hare on the rooftop of the Liberty Mutual building. Okay, so anyway, the anyway, Dave hits pay dirt. Okay, it's I think I always find it very interesting when Mike Butterfield was posting on Google groups back in 1998, and he says he went into the timing never matches up with Butterfield. Butterfield tells you one thing in the crackpot files. I have been following this case for decades. Really? I'm a little bit. I can't help being confused, if I may paraphrase Butterfield. If he'd been following the case for decades, as far as I knew, in 2010, his initial writing on the case was from Google groups in 1998. Okay, so that would have been from 1998 to 2010, which is 12 years. How does 12 years translate to decades? I don't get it. No, he later said that I think he was working. He may have been working on a post office. He was doing some artwork or something, and waiting for, I think, a remodeling crew to clear the way for him to put some artwork on a wall somewhere, and he walked into I think a used bookstore or something, and he happened to mention the subject of the Zodiac killer came up, and the guy said, "Oh, that's been solved. It was solved by this guy named Gareth Penn," and that Mike Butterfield suddenly became aware of this book. Okay. Because the guy who was in the bookstore, or whatever it was, the art supply store, or whatever kind of store it was, he talks about all this on the Zodiac Expert series, which I helped pay for, by the way. But Mike Butterfield says that would have been circa 1991. I don't understand why it took him, particularly since he wasn't talking about it originally on Google Groups. But he gives the impression that all of that took place in 1991. I find it very difficult to believe that, because it would not have been difficult for him to contact Gareth Penn. It never is difficult to contact Gareth. And if Mike Butterfield had the same level of interest in the case, and he was taken enough with what was in the book to demonstrate it on television, and you can go online. You can't find Case Reopened on YouTube, but you can go on, just Google Case Reopened. It will take you to the video, and you can watch the video, and you can see Mike Butterfield demonstrating the Mount Diablo radium and two other things that he never mentions. I'm not sure that he actually demonstrates the Lake Herman Road, Springs and Tuolumne, Blue Rock Springs Park radium. He does demonstrate the X's on the circle, which I think is from the November 9th letter. In any case, and he points to where, when you extend lines through those points, they go directly to Zodiac murder events. Okay, so I don't understand how Mike Butterfield could have found that information in 1991, and then when he starts posting on Google groups in 98, suddenly he's not aware of it, and then suddenly he becomes aware of it while he's posting on Google groups. And I think he was posting to Doug Oswell in 98 or 99, I guess in 98. And he described the Mount Diablo Radian as, I need my fingers for this one, a gold mine. Okay, so that kind of sounds like there's like some way of monetizing that concept. Okay, I mean it's kind of like it's YouTube before YouTube. But Dave Arant, I don't think Dave meant it quite the same way, but Dave refers to in his video taking the right approach is hitting pay dirt and actually being lucky in doing that. But in any case, what we have with Z340 is, let's do another. Okay, we'll do another. Split screen. If you have Dave Oranchak Z340 and Ray Grant Z340, okay, so okay, so you have, oops. Okay, so we have Z340, we have Dave Oranchak solution 2020, Ray Grant solution 2013. Okay, so Dave Oranchak's solution is basically you take the cipher. Well, I was going to say it's a two-step cipher. It's actually, in some ways, it's a multiple-step cipher, because not only are you first transposing the cipher grid, or untransposing the cipher grid, I should say, and then using a computer program to find the values that turn the untransposed grid into some sort of an English message in English. Okay, let's write those steps down, shall we? Okay, so step number 1 would be untransposed cipher. Apply symbol values. Untransposed cipher, apply symbol values. Third step. What I'm about to do is not fair, but I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. Hey, Dave, right here, pal. Okay. I like Dave, by the way. I'm just kidding. Dave's all right. But anyway. All right. Hey, if you're going to do it, do it. You know what I'm saying? Okay, Dave Oranchak 2020. What are the 3 steps in Dave's world that get us to that turn Dave Oranchak? You wouldn't think you could turn Dave Oranchak into a household name, but somehow he was able to do it. And, and well, for one news cycle anyway, that's the I am flabbergasted that Dave gets 2.1 million views for episode 5 and he gets 100,000 for episode 6. Are people's attention spans that short? Apparently they are, okay? If you were interested in the Zodiac and ciphers and everything, wouldn't you move on to episode 6 and see what? Wouldn't you have subscribed to Dave's channel? Yeah, by the way, I'm a subscriber to Dave's channel, and I don't think Dave's a subscriber to my channel. I'm going to check after I upload this video and see if I go up to 141 subscribers. Okay? But anyway, these are the steps. It's untransposed cipher. In other words, this is what you get after you transpose the symbols according to the whatever you want to call it, the knight's move. The what is the thing? It's called the it's every 19th symbol is basically, for the most part, is basically what you're taking. Okay, so don't remember the specific term Dave uses. Anyway, you untranspose the cipher from this to what Dave ended up with as a second step, as the ending of his first step. Then you apply symbol values using the Ural's program AZ Decrypt. Okay, so that gives you a set. That still does not give. By the way, if you do this and then you do this, you still don't get the solution. Okay, you have to play with it. So the third thing is you tweak it. Okay, now I will be the first to tell you, as somebody who is not a cryptographer, and I don't pretend to be a cryptographer, and I also have no desire to ever be, having met several cryptographers, with the exception of Ryan Garlick and Klaus Schmey, who are great guys, but other than those two, and Dave's all right, but anyway, these are the steps that you go through, and if you go through these steps, William Shatner will actually narrate a TV program and talk about you. Although voice actors, I don't think necessarily pay much attention to what they're actually reading. I made I use the example of myself. I'm the fastest male typist I ever met. Okay, and just I think in my life I've met a handful of people, and they were all like executive secretaries who are faster than I was. And but when you're a typist, you're not actually reading what you're typing. In other words, you're looking at the copy, and then what you're looking at, and if you stop to think, everything breaks down. Okay, you can't stop to process what's going into your eyes. It's just, it has to be completely second nature. Okay, that's what makes it work. It's the same thing. One of the commentators on my video is a big Colts fan, and I'm a Steelers fan, so we're basically in the same boat. Although those two teams are playing each other this week, so somebody has to win that game. Oh no, wait, they can tie, I guess. Yeah, I guess that would be fitting somehow. If they both tied and they were both out of the playoffs, that would make sense. Anyway, um, but it's the same idea with being a quarterback, okay, in football, which is you have to reach the point where you're not thinking, you're just reacting, okay, you're just looking at what's out in on the, looking at what the coverage is, and you're just basically reacting to it without thinking. So anyway, it's the, now I'm trying to remember why did I mention the I don't remember why I mentioned the typing, but it had something to had something to do with this. Essentially, what Dave is doing is he's doing like multiple steps in Z340. So your untraceable cipher or untransposed cipher, apply symbol values to that, and then tweak it until it resembles something that you want it to look like. Now, I will be the first to concede that I think that what Dave has produced is the answer to Z340 as far as converting a ciphertext to a plain text, okay? And I'm going to why did I bring typing up? I'll have to watch this video when I'm done with it. It had something to do with what I was talking about, though, I'm sure. What Dave is trying to do, he's trying to convert a ciphertext to a plain text. Okay? Does everybody follow? Like Mr. Foydick was my print shop teacher in ninth grade. He once said, I think the only communication that was ever logged between the two of us, he said, is the mud starting to clear up now? Is the mud starting to clear up now? Dave is converting a ciphertext to a plain text, okay? And what are the Zodiacs saying to Dave and his fellow cryptographers? I am going to give you some busy work to do, okay? And here's the funny thing. Dave even refers to it as busy work on one of his videos. Because what do you get? I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest. Or you get, after you've gone through a hell of a lot more work than you did the first time, you get, I hope you're having fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show. You waited 51 years for that. You better enjoy the message, okay, whatever it is, okay? But this is the idea. You're converting ciphertext to a plain text, okay? How is Ray Grant different from that, okay? Here's the difference. And by the way, this is what makes Dave a creationist, okay? He is a literal believer that the earth and the universe and let there be light and all of that stuff in the Bible is literal, okay? So what you're doing is you are applying a letter of the law solution. And Dave then comes back and says, if I press him, he says, I restrict myself to what I can prove. No, he doesn't. Okay, I will get to that in a minute. Dave does not restrict himself to what he can prove at all. Doesn't come close to doing that. Okay, but let's stay with the cipher for a minute. Convert ciphertext to a plain text. This only works if the ciphertext is actually going to give you information. Okay, what did Albert Einstein said? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Okay, but what did Dave do? Dave went to all this trouble and 650,000 different transposition schemes worth of trouble, feeding all of that into AZ Decrypt and going at, now, did he, what did he receive? What did he receive? He received, I hope you're having fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, and so forth. Okay, that's fool's gold. Okay, you don't know anything more about the Zodiac killer than you did, except that now you know that when you translate a second cipher, you basically get the same kind of message that you got in your first cipher. But now it took you 51 years to get there, and a lot of work. In Dave's case, a lot of work, okay? And this is the assumption that Dave makes. Convert the ciphertext to a plain text, and that will be worth it. Well, again, I said that Dave is not completely wrong, because what he did get is life is at the end of the first, directly at the end of the first half of the cipher, and life is was never transposed. It is exactly where it would be on this, okay? So if I could turn myself around, if there were a second Ray Grant here, and I could go back in time or what have you from the future and point it out. But in other words, life is, that is, let's say, 170, 169, 168, 167, 165 through 170 characters is life is. And that's the way it is on the shirt. And death is also the last 5 characters. No transposition, okay? It's as if, it is almost as if, the Zodiac killer were saying, even if you don't figure out the transposition part of this cipher, this will still be sitting there staring you in the face, okay? Now, in a way that's kind of a ridiculous condition to put on it, because I don't think you could get to this without solving the rest of the cipher. But what the Zodiacs are underscoring is the important part of the ciphertext, of the plain text, is this down here, not all the other stuff, that wasn't me on the TV show, although that's what got Dave to jump out of his chair and got his upset his dog and so forth. Okay, what I am doing differently from what Dave is doing is I am converting the message to information. Okay, in other words, I am saying it is the totality of what the Zodiacs are doing that you have to look at, not necessarily the letter of the law, but this, if you want to call it that, the spirit of the law, the spirit behind what they're doing, okay? And as a result of that, what you're going to get is this. You're going to get, in 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, Dave Oranchak comes out. And what Dave brings to the table is this. I hope you're having fun. That wasn't me on the TV show, okay? Nice work, Dave. You know, that really tells me a lot about who the Zodiac killer is. Thank you. You're a researcher, pal. Is Dave a researcher or a hobbyist? That's another question. Okay. Ray Grant in 2013 looks at the cipher and he says, wait a minute, maybe, well, actually, I didn't look at the cipher. I just looked at, I thought if pi converts to an anagram of Zodiac and you have things like, what's another example in the please rush to editor converts to Michael O'Hare's social security number. The Earth coordinates of Cherry Bates's death converts to Michael O'Hare 117 and 23 and the Zodiac. Okay, if you have that, if you have the gun numbers 22, 9, 45, 37 converting to ERHO, Michael O'Hare's name backwards with the central A taken out so that it converts to a form of 223. If all of that is true, then maybe the number of times that they fired their gun mattered. And I was expecting to get, for the first two crimes, 10 and 7, because he had stabbed Brian Hartnell 7 times, and that would add up to 17. And I was disappointed in that. But then I realized that when you added up the 20 times the number of rows in Z340, it was 20 rows. Number of rows is the cipher grid vertically, okay? So we have by gun, which is 20. He fired a gun 20 times, okay? And then by knife is 17, okay? He stabbed the 2 victims at Lake Berryessa 17 times. So the cipher grid of Z340 is 20 by 17 because that's how many times he struck. He struck 20 times by gun, the vertical component, 17 times by knife, which is the horizontal component. And that gets you me 37 SFPD nothing. In other words, I have struck 37 times, and law enforcement hasn't laid a glove on me yet, okay? So that's the idea, and that's the interpretation of Z340. And here's the question. Which of those two things tells us more about the sender of Z340? I hope you're having fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show. Or I fired 20 shots by gun I created 17 stab wounds by knife. In other words, the what appear to be random events are not random at all. Okay, that seems to be significant information to me. Okay, the events as presented in on the newspapers about the Zodiac killer's adventures in these 4 canonical murders, okay, are they were scripted. So with Dave Oranchak probably watches. It's Monday night, so I don't know. Yeah, Monday Night Raw is still on. Dave can turn the. Of course, he'll be watching this video later on, but I mean, if this were live, Dave could turn on Monday Night Raw, and Dave would probably say, "Hey, these guys are really feuding with one another. I mean, they really need to. There's too much turbulence within this wrestling organization, you know." No, it's scripted. Okay, the entire show is scripted. Everything that you see is scripted, unless something goes wrong. You know, somebody gets hurt or what have you. Okay, but that's the idea. And that's what this idea is, which is the Zodiac events were, to the extent possible, scripted ahead of time. They took 10 shots with them at Lake Herman Road, and they had to fire all 10, even though they only needed 6 to kill the 2 victims. Okay, same thing at Blue Rock Springs Park. They took 9 bullets with them. Michael Magoo was still alive after the Zodiac shot his 9th bullet, and there was nothing he could do. He was already committed to 20 by gun. Okay? They wanted to kill Michael Magoo. Unfortunately, they weren't able to pull that off, and they still needed that last bullet to shoot Paul Stein. So that's what the idea was. Okay? Okay. Ouch. Okay. All right. Here's the thing. I've mentioned that people should watch, if you're going to watch 2.1 million views for episode 5, you should certainly watch episode 6 and episode 9, because in those 2 episodes, Dave talks about how Z340 was put together, and it was a very basic construction. It should not have taken 51 years to solve. Did they have the amount of computer power in 1969 to solve it? Maybe not. Okay, to do what Dave did, which is basically all the grunt work, all the scut work was done by the computer program. But certainly there was enough computer power out there in the world that that Z340 could have been solved within a few years if you if you had access to the computer, to mainframe computers, and you had time, and you had the authorization to try and solve that puzzle, you could certainly have done it. Once you realize that the symbols were transposed, that was certain. All of that was there. It should not have taken 51 years. So the next issue with Z340 that we need to think about is what is going on in the undertext, okay? And essentially what's going on is, the thing that people have to remember is, and anyone doing cryptography, this is why I say people like, why I say somebody like Nick Pelling's an idiot. What is going on with the Zodiac ciphers is not the same thing as what is going on with the Japanese Coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, the reason that the Americans won the Battle of Midway is because they were able to solve JN-25, which was the Japanese naval code. Okay? Now, here's the question. Is the same dynamic there with inventing something like JN-25 as there is with inventing the Zodiac ciphers? No. Okay? We're talking about two different things. If you're at war with somebody, and if your country is at war with another country, what you're trying to do is you're trying to be able to broadcast messages to your side while at the same time let me see if I can find this thing that I did. In other words, the JN-25 is a coding system that the Japanese don't want the Americans to figure out, okay? Whereas the Zodiac ciphers are more similar to, let's say, the New York Times puzzle page, where they are essentially, the New York Times is essentially, let me see if I can get to this. I'm not sure where it is. The New York Times is essentially challenging you to solve the puzzle. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I don't think it's. Okay, I have it somewhere. It's not there. Anyway, the idea is that in wartime, you don't want your opponents to figure your coding system out. But when you're doing a puzzle for the public, like the New York Times does, New York Times crossword page, that's exactly what you're doing. You're challenging the public. The New York Times crosswords are a challenge to the reader, see if you can figure this out. And that's essentially what the Zodiacs were doing, okay? So what's the next logical step from that? Okay, well, the next logical step is that essentially what the Zodiacs were doing, and what makes what the Zodiacs were doing different from, well, let's write this out here. You have the military use of coding systems at war, where you don't want your opponent to figure out your coding system. You have the New York Times puzzle page where they want you to figure out the puzzle system. Okay? And then in between, you have the Zodiac killers. Where, on the one hand, the Zodiac killers are at war with society. So in a sense, it's a kind of military application, okay? On the one hand, they're challenging you to figure out their coding system, but at the same time, it's much more serious than the New York Times because they're killing people, okay? So the approach of the Zodiacs is kind of like halfway between a military system, and what you would get like during peacetime puzzles, if you want to call them that. And so what's going on then with the sequence of what the Zodiacs were doing? Okay, so you start with Z408, and then you go to a much more difficult cipher, obviously. Z408 was solved within a matter of days of its being presented. As Tom Voigt has pointed out, always get that Tom Voigt reference in every video. Tom has pointed out pretty much anybody could have solved this. The Hardens happened to solve it, but it's a very simple cipher to solve. And the FBI solved it also independently of the Hardens, okay? Z340 obviously is a much more difficult cipher involving transposition. You have to be aware even of the possibility of transposing symbols. You have to think of that as one way of solving a puzzle before you can even solve this, okay? So what Dave says is the Zodiac noticed how quickly Z408 was solved, so he created a much more difficult puzzle, okay? What Gareth Penn actually says, I think he probably says it in Times 17. He may have only said it in his handouts or in his letters to me back in the 80s, which is these two were created at the same time, okay? And the idea, it's the same idea really with both of them, which is converting these ciphertexts to a plain text isn't going to get you anywhere, okay? It is only if, in the case of Z408, you can convert those last 18 symbols, and only the last 17 actually have meaning in Z408. In Z340, it is only if you look at the cipher grid and are not distracted by, well, we were able to solve this in a few days, we shouldn't have any trouble solving this. We know how this guy works, okay? But the point is that regardless of whether this was a reaction to the solving of this puzzle, or whether they were both constructed at the same time, obviously the plain text message itself had to be changed after the debacle that was October 22nd, when Eric Weil called into the Channel 7 show, because of it says not only that wasn't me on the TV show, but also mentions the gas chamber, which I think Eric Weil mentions and Melvin Belli mentions. So clearly the plain text was changed. However, my guess is that the grid for Z340 was already set in stone. It was just a matter of what the plain text was, how the plain text was going to read. Okay, so the question next is, what's going on here? Okay, and basically what's going on is anytime you do, if you do a puzzle for the New York Times crossword, and usually the puzzles have a theme, okay? So, or very often the puzzles have a theme. You know, if it's Thanksgiving, it may have a Thanksgiving theme. If it's Christmas, it may have a Christmas theme. 4th of July may have a patriotic theme. But there's an additional message which is being sent from the New York Times to the puzzle solver that the puzzle solver gets as a result of solving the puzzle, Okay. And with Z340 in particular, what you get is, as Dave points out in episode 9, in the odds and ends episode, is that there are all sorts of things going on in the undertext of Z340, okay, which in effect are a message. It's kind of a theme that Z340 had, which is there. It's a communication that is sent from the cipher creator to the cryptographers. Okay? In other words, how the cipher is constructed is itself a message. It's Marshall McLuhan all over again. The medium is the message. Okay? The format of the form is in this case more important than what the content is. Form trumps content. Okay? Same thing up here, really, in both of them. The form of what looks like to be a standard cipher is more important than the actual message that you find. The message isn't that significant, okay? So what do we get when we look under Z340? Here's what we get. To cite an example, and I will I should probably check that just to make absolutely sure that that's what the thing looks like. But I have a pretty good idea where that is in Dave's.
But we're going to pick a different substitution.
Let's go to Dave Oranchak here. Let's go to videos. Let's go to odds and ends if we can. Oh, okay. Yeah, it is. All right.
They are made up of repeating trigrams.
Here it is.
In my other videos, and decide to mark it with hyphens. It's an interesting theory, but we don't have a way to prove it. Another pattern that caught the attention of code breakers are these repeating L-shaped patterns, sometimes called pivots. They are made up of repeating trigrams going in different directions, but meeting together at a common symbol. This one has R, J, and I repeating horizontally and vertically. And this one has backwards B, dot, and backwards C, also repeating horizontally and vertically. In my other videos and presentations, I talked a lot about these patterns because they're very unusual and rarely appear naturally when making normal substitution ciphers. I've always believed that there were possibly some sign of a transposition scheme. Well, Zodiac did use a transposition scheme, but apparently it has nothing to do with these patterns. I've made thousands of test ciphers that use the same kind of transposition Zodiac used, and those kinds of patterns do not seem to appear more often just because of that scheme. Let's decode the symbols in those patterns. When you apply the substitution key to the 340, you get this transposed plaintext. The cipher patterns show up because of these repeating patterns in the plaintext. You can see O, S, and E repeating in the one on the left, and E, N, and E repeating in the one on the right. But when you unfold the message to get the original, those letters are spread out. There's not really a pattern to it, so maybe they are just appearing by chance. But when Zodiac assigned his symbols, there was only a rather small chance of preserving those patterns, because he had multiple choices for each letter. For example, he had 4 symbols to pick from for the 2 O's, but picked R for both of them. He had 4 symbols for the S's, but picked J for both, and 6 symbols for the E's, but picked I. There's a similar story for the second pivot. He picked the backwards B for both of these E's, then the dot for both of these N's, and the backwards C for both of these E's. If he was assigning symbols completely randomly for both patterns, there was only about a 1 in 17,000 chance of accidentally preserving both of those patterns. So it's possible he saw those patterns and tried to preserve them on purpose, so they'd show up in his final cipher and confuse codebreakers. Well, I can't really prove it one way or another, but one thing's certain. It definitely confused me and many others for a very long time. A sort of related type of pattern are these.
Okay, that's straight from the horse's mouth there. Straight from the Oranchak's mouth, okay? So here's what we get. We get repeating patterns in backwards L's, okay? That, as Dave said, there's only a 1 in 17,000 chance that this is random, okay? That this sort of symbol assignment is random, okay? Now, here's what we're supposed to do. Remember that this is part of the communication that is going from the cipher creator to the public, to the cryptographers, okay? In other words, this is the undertext. It's like in the New York Times where they're showing you, okay, we're doing Christmas themes under, so, look for possible, answers like Santa Claus or reindeer or what have you, okay? And same thing with this. It is in effect, it is the puzzle creator sort of going like this. Look for you, or do you see these repeating patterns that otherwise seem like they're, well, another example. Dave pointed out, Jarl van Eyck pointed out, that there are 26 row-sized chunks in the undertext of Z340, okay? There are 26 of them. There are 26 instances. It couldn't possibly be because there are 26 letters in the alphabet, could it? There are 26 row-sized chunks in the undertext of Z340, okay? In other words, there are 26 examples of 17 symbols, of a 17 symbol sequence where the symbols do not repeat, okay? There's no repetition, okay? That would be a unique sequence, but if you had repeating symbols but they were moved around, those would also be unique. But it sure seems to me, maybe I'm not a cryptographer. When it comes to cryptography anyway, I am not as smart as Dave Oranchak. I will be more than happy to stipulate that before I say anything else. Here's what I don't get, okay? And here's what, you reach a point in life, okay, where something jumps out at you, okay? And it's this equation right here, okay? Here's the equation. 2 plus 2 equals 4, okay? If you start out with two things, here, and then you add two things to them, like that, you're going to end up with 4 things, okay? By the way, this does not work if you're posting on a Zodiac Killer message board. Just want to warn you ahead of time. And many of the administrators of Zodiac message boards do, like Dr. Nika, for example, do not recognize this equation. So just need to point that out to you before you go looking for this on the Zodiac message board. You ain't gonna find it. Okay, but what you get on Zodiac killer message boards is, well, maybe it's 3, or maybe it's 5, or maybe it's 3.5, or maybe it's 5.3. Okay, I'll tell you who was an absolute expert at that was Jibber Jabber on Tom's board. Now he calls himself Zodiac, the face of evil. But he could start with this, and you wouldn't believe what he gets over here. Okay? Or he could start with this and get all kinds of weird numbers over here. I don't think he's the second coming of Ramanujan. You know, I was a recruiter for American Mensa. I don't think I could squeeze Jibber Jabber into that group. No matter what I did, no matter how much coaching I did, I don't think I could get him in. But anyway, here's the question. Here's the question to be asked. And I know Dave's a bright guy, okay? So I know Dave's watching this, okay? Here's the question. Just answer me, riddle me this, okay? How is it that someone who is meticulous enough to create something like this, which only has a 1 in 17,000 chance of appearing by random, and it isn't as if he's doing just like one thing in the undertext. He's doing a bunch of things. The 26 row size chunks that jumped out at Ural. I don't think Ural is stupid either, okay? The absence of certain symbols in the center of the cipher grid. They're at the top of the cipher grid. They're at the bottom of the cipher grid. You can't find them in the middle of the grid, okay? They're significant enough. They jump out at somebody who is familiar with the sort of thing that cryptographers look for, like Dave Oranchak, okay? They jump out at him. They are part of the conversation that the Zodiacs are having with the cryptographers, okay, in the undertext. They are part of the theme that they are pushing forward. Do you see all of this stuff? Okay. Okay, I want you to make sure you have a grasp at this stuff because a quiz is going to follow almost immediately here. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question that you are not going to be able to answer. Okay, so everybody get this? Even if you're not Dave, you can probably get this. If you're Dave, you should have gotten this before I even had to do the video. Here's the thing. If you've got somebody who's creating a cipher grid that has all of that stuff going on underneath it, is that person going to create, I'm not sure I can even illustrate this. You know, I uncapped my my marker, my dry erase marker, like I'm going to be able to illustrate this. I'm not sure I can do it, okay? If you've got, let's do it this way. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use the blue marker just for the hell of it. Is this the blue marker? Maybe this is the black marker. Have I been using the blue marker all this time? No, this is the blue marker. Okay. All right. Okay, if you've got, all right, we'll do it this way. Let's say you've got a cipher grid and it looks like this. Or a 2, 3. I should have done that with, well, we'll do it differently. All right. Okay, we have a cipher grid that looks like this. Just for the sake of argument here. It's 17 letters. A to Q. Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet. Okay? And when we set up the cipher grid, what we do is, I forget which column this happens in, but let's assume it's the fourth column again. Here's what you do. Instead of presenting this in your cipher grid, what you present is this. You take the fourth symbol, or whatever it was. Let's say it was, I think it may have been the eighth symbol. Whatever, it was the H, okay? And I think that what followed it was R-A-T-E-N-Y, something like that. I don't want to go back through the episode and create even more dead air than I usually have here, okay? But this is the idea. This is what you have. The guy who created the cipher took a letter out of this sequence, moved everything over one column, and then put this letter at the end of the sequence. Okay? Are you following me? I can do this. I can go back and do exactly what Dave did, but I'm just illustrating that's what happened. Essentially, the person who created the cipher took one symbol out, moved everything over one column, and then at the end of the row, added that letter that he had taken out, which was an H, okay? Here's the question. And Dave characterized that as mistakes that the cipher creator made in creating the cipher. Does somebody who is doing this, he is duplicating the symbol values for each of these characters, and he's created 26 row-sized chunks. Yes, you have to be meticulous to create 26 sequences of 17 characters where none of the symbols repeat. It seems to me that would have to be done on purpose, and it would require a certain level of meticulousness. Same thing with characters being on the top and bottom of the cipher and not in the middle of the cipher, okay? Now, does this person who's doing this make a mistake like this? Okay? Oh. I know. Here we are. Where's the Tim? Come on. Where's the timpani at the end of it? It's supposed to go boom at the end. I didn't hear any timpani. Someone who is so meticulous that that he creates an undertext that is blatant enough that Dave Oranchak, and multiple examples of blatant meticulousness on the part of the cipher creator. Would that cipher creator then make a mistake on that level? Okay, after doing a transposition of not only doing a what did he call that thing, the 19 camera, I'll remember as soon as I hit stop on the record. I'll remember what it is. Does the transposition, and he is meticulous enough that he gets the life is up at the end of the first half of the cipher and the death down at the bottom of the second cipher. How does that person somehow move one row of the cipher over by one space? Okay, by accident. Okay. Let's not even make it any kind of absolute question. Okay. Let's do what Dave did with the backwards L's and turn it into a matter of how likely is it? How likely is it that someone who is meticulous to the extent, and again, let's take this. Let's go at a level deeper here, and point out that somebody who is doing this inside a cipher, assuming that these were intentional, I don't think there's any way around that. Know exactly what the intent was. I guess we can't be sure, but someone whose work shows that level of detail, okay, is not a dabbler. It's not somebody who is like a Dennis Rader who decides to send, because the Zodiac killer did apparently, decides he's going to send cryptograms to the police, okay? But nothing on that level, or at least I don't think so. Maybe he did, I don't know. But in other words, someone who is a serial killer first and a decoder ring hobbyist second, okay, could not produce that level of detail in the undertext of Z340, and yet that's what we find. Therefore, whoever constructed Z340, it seems to me, was someone who was a cryptographer on the level of Dave Oranchak, was a cryptographer on the level of any of the people that Dave mentioned in his episodes, okay, or was roughly on that level. It was someone who was a practicing ACA member, was somebody who was really good at it and knew what he was doing, and knew what he was doing enough to create those little those details in his undertext. And somebody who is on that level would not have made a mistake on the level that Dave is talking about. And you see, for example, in Z408, these symbol segments are, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this, but the sequence in just in Z408, which is nowhere near as complex a cipher as Z340, but the use of the letter E uses seven different symbols, and I think it's Z9 backwards P. I'm not sure. I would have to look at it again, but E equals Z9 backwards P plus O N E. Okay, that sure looks like a message. Okay, it sure looks. I would have to sit down and think about this. Think about what they might be talking about here, to figure out what that sequence means. But the point I'm trying to make is, it sure looks like the sequence of symbol, and this is, by the way, is a repeating sequence. I don't think it goes all the way through Z408, but over and over again they keep going Z. Every time they hit an E, they do Z, then 9, then I think it's backwards P, plus, then O, then N, then E. Then they go back to Z, and so forth. Okay. So clearly, what I said before about Polonius and Hamlet, though this be madness, yet there is method in it. Okay, there is method behind what he is doing. And someone who created Z340, it seems to me, could not possibly be, forget about Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway, I think, had an IQ in double digits. And I don't think Dennis Rader was particularly bright guy. Bundy was a bright guy. He wasn't Mensa level, certainly. But I think you're dealing with somebody clearly who is much brighter than, and that is obvious in the undertext. It is obvious in the glimpses that we get, for example, in the Badlands card, of somebody who just speaks perfect English, and the Count Marco letter as well. Someone who speaks perfect English when he wants to, and then misspells words when that's convenient, and gives people who are gullible, translate that to people who post on Zodiac Killer message boards, this opinion that the Zodiac was some slobbering, I think I said an inch and a half of drool, a foot and a half of drool hanging out of his mouth. Okay. What we know about the Zodiac Killer, particularly from the construction of Z340, tells us otherwise. Okay, it tells us that this is somebody not only who was familiar with the construction of transpositional ciphertext, but likely had some sort of background. As I said, in the military. U Penn was in the Army Air Corps, and he did cryptography during World War II. And the type of, Dave won't address the subject for whatever reason, but the type of transposition that you see in Z340 is almost exactly, and possibly exactly, identical to what you see in the Army code manuals. And again, if you were doing cryptography for the Army, okay, you're significantly, there's a reason they call it intelligence, okay? It's because they use bright people like Dave, okay, to do that sort of, and like Sam Blake, he's obviously a very bright guy, and Jarl Van Eyck. I was a mailman for 37 years. You know what Jarl Van Eyck does for a living? He's a warehouse operator, okay? Okay. So Dave should not have put, former letter carrier Ray Grant on it. If he's going to do that, every time he mentions Jarl Van Eyck, he should say warehouse operator Jarl Van Eyck. So otherwise, I don't see why you're bringing that up. I'm not defensive at all about what I did for a living. I love the U.S. Postal Service. I loved my job. Again, I'm not defensive of that. I find it funny that that people are sometimes characterized by what they do for a living. You can be a very bright person and do a job that doesn't necessarily require, that level of intellect. Anyway, what else did I want to say about Dave? Anyway, um, let me think here. One of the things that I was going to talk about this in my regular talk, which would not have been aimed at Dave necessarily, but the next chapter. But I can say it more than once. There's this idea. There are these things on Zodiac message boards that people believe. Okay. And you just have to shake your head. You go, there's this saying that people like to give on Zodiac Killer message boards. 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Okay. Really? Dave Oranchak, I asked him one time why he believes that the Zodiac Killer was just one guy running amok on the landscape. And Dave said something to the effect that he didn't believe in conspiracy theories. Well, I generally don't believe in conspiracy theories. I believe, for example, Lee Harvey Oswald, I believe acted alone because it's not to kill a United States president back in the 1960s and before that did not require any kind of conspiracy. All it required is one person with a weapon and access to the president. Giuseppe Zangaro almost killed FDR. He came within a foot and a half of changing how different would our history be if FDR had been assassinated in March of 1933. I would guess that it would be significantly different. The Depression, I think, would have been different. I think World War II would have been different. So the whole idea that that you need that you can have a small number of people involved in why don't we know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa? If sooner or later the conscience of people is going to start bothering them, and well, if their consciences were going to start bothering them, they probably wouldn't have killed Jimmy Hoffa in the first place, right? I mean, usually you keep quiet about things that you don't want other people to know about. I mean, that's why Ted Bundy didn't, discuss his adventures at killing people with his girlfriend and with the people that he worked with. It's like you have an example in the case of Bundy. I will be doing videos on Bundy in sometime in the future. But you have in the case of Ted Bundy, Seattle Ted in Washington. Ted Bundy, there was a sketch of Seattle Ted, which was making the rounds in Seattle. And it was known that Seattle Ted drove a VW Beetle that was tan colored. And Ted's coworkers and friends would say, "Hey, Ted, Seattle Ted drives a car just like yours. And you look just like the sketch." Yeah. Probably because Ted Bundy was Seattle Ted. I'm guessing that's why. It's like in the Zodiac case, we have live suspects, Michael O'Hare and Gareth Penn, and I am able to do videos and since 1990 accuse them publicly, and nobody stops me. And I'm able to go there to their colleagues and get them kicked out of their employment, and nothing happened. No, I haven't been sued yet by anybody. But again, these, this whole idea that a small group of people certainly could not keep quiet about things. It's ridiculous. Okay. How does the mafia work? It works. It's organized crime. It's people doing things that they don't want the public to know about. I was just looking at a video on YouTube about Goodfellas, and the question was asked, why does Tommy get whacked and Henry and Jimmy don't get whacked even though they're not Italian? Tommy's Italian, but he ends up getting whacked. And part of the reason, there are numerous reasons for Tommy getting whacked in that movie, but one of the reasons is that Tommy was just like killing people indiscriminately. He kills Spider. He killed some guy on the street just to try out his gun. Just boom, just shot somebody. And what was felt within the rank and file of organized crime was, this guy's like raising our profile publicly in a way that we don't want it raised. They want everything to be nice and quiet. Okay, so that's the whole idea. And one of the reasons that Tommy ends up getting shot, and Tommy in real life ended up, there were specific reasons for him getting shot, but one of the reasons he got shot was Tommy was not good for business. Okay, he was too noisy. Okay, and that's the when the mafia comes down to is they're interested in making money. As Joe Pistone said, you will begin possibly to understand the mafia if you realize that they're basically there to make it's about making money. Okay, all that other stuff is kind of collateral to that, but it's really about money. Okay, and anyone who is a threat to that, like if you're calling too much attention to yourself, that can lead to your being whacked. Okay, so so anyway, that's basically the idea. Is that you have many examples in the world of people who are, Al Qaeda. They managed to keep it relatively quiet. Not that the investigators in U.S. intelligence should have been able to figure out what was going to happen. There were certainly enough signs. They had arrested Zacharias Moussaoui, and they knew that he was at a aviation school, and he was learning to fly a plane without learning how to take off or land. Okay, so and Islamic terrorists are notorious for not being original thinkers. Okay, so it should have jumped out to the FBI in Minneapolis that, hey, maybe we should call some flight schools and find out if there are other men with the profile of this guy who who are doing the same thing, and if there may be some sort of operation planned. Okay, but they didn't do that. Okay, so the I don't understand why the why that would be enough to stop somebody who's spending a lot of his free time trying to solve a particular series of murders. Okay, and they're just not open to the possibility that more than one person may have been involved. Okay, that seems obvious to me, but in the Zodiac case, you have these things that happen that don't make any sense, which is, I mean, I was listening to, because I may be doing a debate shortly. That's still up in the air apparently, but I was emailing a moderator for the possibility that I may do a debate with somebody. And I'm open to debating anyone, by the way. I'm open to debating Dave if he wants to debate. Of course, he's not going to debate me. He has nothing to gain, a lot to lose if he debates me. But the idea being that in the Zodiac killer case, you have you have people on YouTube videos talking about how Sherry Bates fought off her attacker for a while anyway before she was murdered, okay? And before you even get to that point, she wasn't seen in the library, and the Riverside PD did a real-time reconstruction of the night of the murder, and nobody saw her. And she was seen or otherwise encountered by 7 different people in the 2.5 hours prior to the last time she was seen, and which was at 6:15 p.m. And there were friends of hers in the library. And we know that if you're assuming she was in the library, you're assuming that because she checked books out. So that puts her at the checkout desk, okay? Why didn't anybody notice her, okay? She had too much food in her stomach. Her car was left in a state that is consistent with her being led away involuntarily, okay? She would have locked her car up. That's what her fiance says. So all of that tells us that Sherry Bates was probably abducted. She was never in the RCC library that night, but it doesn't matter. It's kind of like you're trying to convert somebody to a new religion. And I can go down to Bob Jones University and try to convince the students there that there's this thing called evolution, and it's the basis for a lot of our science. They're not interested, people who post on, not just the people who post on Zodiac message boards, but the people who are doing YouTube videos about the Zodiac killer just aren't in there. The evidence does not interest them unless it backs up this viewpoint that the Zodiac killer was this one sad little man who was running amok on the landscape. And unfortunately, given sufficient evidence that even he recognizes in the undertext of Z340, Dave isn't willing to consider that possibility. It's hard. Well, I won't say it's hard to believe. It's actually pretty easy to believe. I just don't. I was gonna say I don't get it, but I do get it. they're just not willing to change their minds. No. Again, I tried explaining that I didn't have any preconceptions about what the evidence was going to look like when I started doing, because in my first book, I'm just talking about the conceptual art angle of the Zodiac killers. I'm not really talking about, I assume the crimes were committed conventionally. And when I started looking at the actual evidence in the crimes, because I was being criticized by people like Michael Butterfield for not knowing enough about those things. Once I started studying the police reports, I said, well, Sherry Bates was abducted before she was murdered. She never made it to the library. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were abducted before they were murdered. Nobody sees them after they drive away. No credible witness sees them after I'm starting to sound like Mike Butterfield there. After they drive away from Sharon Henslin's house at 9 o'clock, okay? And all these weird things keep happening, and Dave Oranchak points out in his in episode 1 that one of the things that Robert Graysmith does when he's trying to convert C340 to a plain text is if he runs into symbols that he doesn't understand, I think there are dots and dashes in the ciphertext. He just ignores them. If he starts with a cipher grid, and there are letters in the cipher grid that don't conform to his plain text reading, he just throws them away. Okay. Well, you can't throw away things like the stomach contents of Sherry Bates, the condition her car was left in, the autopsy where all the significant wounds are in her throat, and everything else is collateral cuts and scrapes, but no stab wounds. Same thing with Lake Herman Road. An Eagle Scout somehow ends up on a curfew, ends up out at Lake Herman Road 10 minutes after the curfew. Can't get back any earlier than 11:25. Was going to give his class ring to Betty Lou Jensen. He was still holding it when his body was looked at the hospital. Betty Lou Jensen's bladder was full of urine, according to the autopsy. Their car engine was lukewarm. Were they sitting inside the car? If they were sitting inside the car without the engine on, why weren't the windows frosted over? It's they do what the hobbyists do, what Robert Graysmith does with Z340. Anything he doesn't like, he just ignores. Okay, so I'm trying to think if I'm sure there are like other things that Dave has mentioned. Well, I'm not going to. I think I'm reaching like this. Are we at 3 hours already? Let me see. No, just 2.5. Okay. I'm not going to go into this at length, but Dave says, let me get to.
Related to the crimes. So that's their evidence. A lot of it's circumstantial and could be dismissed as coincidences.
This is episode
and
10.
Much of it relies on a connection between Zodiac and the Sherry Jo Bates case. But the Riverside Police Department has very strongly said there is no such connection. They say Zodiac did not kill Bates. The remaining evidence is their decision.
I'm going to sound like Dave at the beginning of episode 5. Okay. Riverside PD sent a memo to the Napa Sheriff's Office. It was dated October 20th, 1969. When Dave isn't doing transposition, feeding transpositions into AZ Decrypt, if he has a few, now that he's not doing that anymore, he should have extra time. He can go and look at that memo, okay? Riverside PD, Chief Kincaid, writing to the Napa Sheriff's Office, October 20th, 1969. You can see from that, let me see if I can probably get, this just absolutely, this is somebody who is actually presenting himself as go back this way. Let's see if we have. Okay, here we are. All right. This is a letter to Earl Randall, Sheriff of Napa County. Attention, Captain Donald A. Townsend. It is from Chief of Police L.T. Kincaid of Riverside. It was received October 22nd, 1969. Okay. Let's see what the actual attitude of the police departments was. Okay. This is, I'm not blue in the face shit. I've made this point I don't know how many times, and it just never lands on Zodiac message boards, okay, or websites, or Dave Oranchak, okay. Dear Sir, this letter is in reference to our telephone conversation of 10/17/69 regarding the similar MO of your Zodiac suspect and the suspect of our homicide, file number 352-481. In other words, in the very first paragraph of a letter dated October 20th, 1969, Riverside PD acknowledges that the Zodiac killer and the Zodiac killer in the Bay Area and the killer of Sherry Bates have a similar modus operandi. It may aid you to have a brief synopsis of our homicide. It is as follows. On October 30th, 1966, Cherry Joe Bates, a college student at Riverside City College, was brutally murdered. I have to read this entire thing because otherwise there's always the possibility that people are going to stop listening anyway, but just to be just absolutely conscientious about this. Our investigation revealed that the victim had gone to the City College campus to obtain some books from the library. The library was open on Sunday for the students' benefit. It was established that she had entered the library and checked out 3 books at approximately 6 p.m. That, I need to interject here that there is no such establishment of the facts. That's Riverside PD basically saying we did a walkthrough of the homicide on 2 weeks after the murder happened, and nobody saw Sherry Bates. So we are now assuming that Sherry Bates entered the library when it immediately after it opened at 6 p.m. and checked her books out and ran back out again. And she did that before everyone was settled. And as a result of that, nobody remembers seeing her. Well, there are all sorts of problems with that assumption. First of all, if Sherry Bates ran in, grabbed books off the shelves, she couldn't have done that anyway. She would not have had her bibliography. She wouldn't have known which books to take out. But if she had done that, why wouldn't the librarian who checked her books out have remembered her? Because she would have been the first person in the door and the first person back out the door. She wouldn't have remembered seeing Sherry Bates run in, breathlessly check the books and run back out again. Okay. The other problem with that is that there are 2 witnesses whose sightings are sequential. A friend of Sherry saw Sherry driving toward RCC at 6:10 p.m. near the Magnolia Center. A March Air Force Base man saw Sherry driving up an alley behind the Shelley Lynn Apartments at 6:50, or saw a blonde in a lime green VW Beetle driving up the alley behind his apartment house at 6:15 p.m. That's about as sequential as you can get, okay? Particularly if you assume that Sherry drove home to get her bibliography. I've been over this 100 times, okay? So she couldn't have gone into the library at 6 p.m., assuming that's right. And then Riverside PD comes back and says, well, there are blondes all over the place and VW Beetles all over the place. maybe your friend was wrong. Okay, well, her going in and out of the library still doesn't make sense. What does she do after she comes out of the library? Was the distributor wire pulled or not? If it wasn't pulled, then she just gets in her car and drives away. If it was pulled, what's her next move? Does she go back into the library and call her dad? Does she, or ask? She had friends inside the library. Wouldn't she have asked her friends for help? It was established that she had entered the library and checked out 3 books at approximately 6 p.m. She returned to her vehicle, which was parked on a city street a short distance from the library, placed her books in the vehicle, and attempted to start her vehicle. The vehicle had been tampered with, so it would not start. This was evidently done by the suspect to keep the victim near her vehicle so that the suspect could make his approach. Our victim then left her vehicle accompanied by the suspect and walked approximately 200 feet from her vehicle into a dirt driveway between 2 houses. These houses were vacant and a part of the school property, having recently been purchased by the city college. While in this driveway area, our victim was attacked with a knife and stabbed numerous times in the chest. That is not true. She was also stabbed once in the back. Where is that in the autopsy? And her throat was severely cut, almost to the extent where she was decapitated. In addition to the stab wounds, our victim had been beaten about the face and had been choked. Okay. Neither of those things is true. There was no evidence that she was punched in the face. There was no particular hemorrhaging to her eyes. There was no evidence that the victim had been sexually attacked, as she was fully clothed and the clothing was not disarranged. There was nothing to indicate a motive of robbery, as our victim's purse and its contents were intact. From all indications, the knife used by the suspect was one of approximately 1/2 inch width blade by 3.5 inches long. 1 month after the homicide, letters were received at the press and at our department, written by the suspect of our homicide. The suspect used a black felt pen to address the envelopes and had used uppercase print. The confession letter was typed. There are numerous errors in spelling, punctuation, etc., as you will notice. The person who wrote the confession letter is aware of facts about the homicide that only the killer would know. There is no doubt that the person who wrote the confession letter is our homicide suspect. The original of this letter was evidently destroyed or kept by the suspect, as the press in our department received a carbon copy of the original. These carbon copies were a 4th or 5th copy and difficult to read. A photograph of this letter and the envelopes is attached. A reproduction of the confession letter is also attached. It should be noted that the copies received by the press in our department were on plain white paper of poor quality. Width of the paper is 8 inches. The length of the paper is unknown, as the suspect, a peculiarity, tore off the bottom and top of the paper. Refer to the photographs. It might be worthwhile to note that just outside the city limits of Riverside is located March Air Force Base, a strategic air command base. Physical evidence found at the scene of our crime indicated that heel prints found near the body were made by a heel that was manufactured for military and other government agencies, including prisons. We were able to lift some latent fingerprints from the victim's vehicle. These prints were not identified. Our unidentified prints are on file with the FBI under the FBI file number 32-27195. Latent case number 73096. Copies of the latent lifts from your homicide were obtained from CII and sent to the FBI for comparison with the latent lifts of our investigation. There are numerous similarities in your homicide and our INV 352-481. I thought you should be aware that we are working a similar type homicide investigation. If you are able to determine by handwriting comparison, or by any other means that your homicide suspect is the same as ours, please advise. I will notify you of the results in comparing your latent lifts with ours as soon as I hear from the FBI. I hope this information may aid you in your investigation. Please be assured of our complete cooperation in all matters of mutual interest. Yours very truly, L.T. Kincaid, Chief of Police. Attachments: 2 reproductions of the confession letter, photograph of the envelope received by the press, actually received by the Riverside Enterprise, a photograph of the envelope received by our department, 2 Xerox copies of envelopes received after having been processed for fingerprints. Copy to Chief of Police, San Francisco Police Department. Okay. I think it is clear from that memo, I don't think it could be any clearer, that the thing that was pending upon, at the conclusion of that letter, was the FBI comparison between the Riverside prints and the Presidio Heights prints, okay? Because Riverside PD did an immediate about face and no longer considered, not only did not consider the Sherry Bates murder to be a Zodiac murder, but Steve Shumway said to Tom Voigt, I believe in 2004, this is something that you can tell the people on your message boards. There is a person who killed Sherry Bates, and there is a person who killed. There is the Zodiac killer. These are 2 different people. Okay. The only way they could come to that conclusion is if the FBI lab, they certainly couldn't come to it through handwriting, is if particularly since Sherwood Morrill said that the Riverside handwriting was similar to the Zodiac handwriting. And that's dramatized in the Fincher movie. The only conclusion that can be come to is that when the FBI lab compared the prints left on Sherry Bates's car with the prints left on Paul Stein's cab, that they were found to be mutually exclusive. Okay, therefore, assuming that one person killed Sherry Bates and one person killed Paul Stein, then we're talking about 2 different suspects. And we're talking about 2 different entities. As I say, I believe the prints left in Riverside are UPenn's, and the prints left in Presidio Heights are Michael O'Hare's. And they were both Zodiacs, so yes, the Zodiac was involved in both homicides, okay? But the point to be made there is that I would take anything that I get from police agencies with a fairly significantly sized grain of salt. Let me see if I have.
Evidence is their decipherments, which I'll dive into in a bit. All in all, they say they have pictures from Post's former darkroom, including this so-called selfie the killer took while wearing the Lake Berryessa hood. And finally, they have decipherments of the Zodiac's letters, cards, and ciphers that allegedly produced the suspect's name, as well as detailed instructions on where to find evidence related to the crimes. So that's their evidence. A lot of it's circumstantial and could be dismissed as coincidences, and much of it relies on a connection between Zodiac and the Sherry Jo Bates case. But the Riverside Police Department has very strongly said there is no such connection. They say Zodiac did not kill Bates. The remaining evidence is their decipherments, which I'll dive into in a bit. All in all, the evidence does not appear to be very strong. It also seems to be missing some really important details, like handwriting samples and connections between the suspect and the crime locations. Where did this suspect come from in the first place? The team's attention on Gary Francis' post originated with a news anchor named Dale Julin, who received a tip about the suspect. There's not much I can do to evaluate what he's saying there. They would have to show their work, which...
Let's see if we can get the police here.
Police officer Ryan Railsback told the Chronicle. If you read what they put out, it's all circumstance. It's not FBI. The FBI's investigation.
What are police saying now that you guys have claimed that you've got the guy?
Well, I mean, obviously they're resistant, and it's an issue that we run into with cases all the time, where law enforcement unfortunately does not want to accept outside help or outside theories from a bunch of civilians.
Today, the FBI told me the Zodiac killer case remains open and that there is no new information to share. I got the same response from Vallejo Police.
Technically, the FBI does not have a Zodiac investigation. Why? Because it hasn't been proven that the Zodiac crossed state lines. So anything the FBI does with regard to the Zodiac investigation by the jurisdictional agencies, which are, in the case of the canonical crime, Solano County Sheriff's Office, Vallejo PD in the case of the Darlene Ferrin murder, Napa Sheriff's Office in the case of Cecilia Shepard. Solano County was in with the Lake Herman Road murders, and SFPD, okay? So anything the FBI does is in collaboration with those agencies. It does not have it does not have any sort of it doesn't have an investigation. If you go to the FBI files, what you're seeing is stuff that were sent to things that were sent to the FBI by people like Gareth Penn and Ray Grant, for that matter. I used to send them VHS tapes that were similar to this. What you're seeing now here on YouTube is what I used to send the FBI back in the early to mid 1990s, and saying, using a VHS in my kitchen, and saying, this is what I think, this is what I think is going on there. But the FBI doesn't have an official investigation. So why the FBI is weighing in on these things, I haven't figured out yet. But there are a lot of things in the Zodiac case that I haven't figured out yet. The case itself, yeah, I figured that out. But I mean, as far as some of the other things.
SFPD.
Here's an official statement from the FBI. The FBI's investigation into the Zodiac killer remains open and unsolved. Due to the ongoing nature of the investigation and out of respect for their victims and their families, we will not be providing further comment at this time. NBC reported that the FBI rebuts the claim that the case is solved. The San Francisco Police Department said, "We are unable to speak to potential suspects as this is still an open investigation."
Not
Here's
really.
the response from the Vallejo Police Department. A Vallejo police spokesperson said the department could neither confirm nor deny Wednesday's report from the casebreakers, and added that they would announce any major developments. Riverside Police, on the other hand, had some even stronger things to say about the casebreakers. Is there a chance that the casebreakers suspect killed Sherry Jo Bates? No, Riverside Police Officer Ryan Railsback told the Chronicle. If you read what they put out, it's all circumstantial evidence. It's not a whole lot.
He's a management entertainment attorney for Casebreakers. He was the guy emailing us about, very insistent about the reward. We're working with the FBI, not retired FBI.
Unfortunately, their response all along has been, we already are positive.
Now, to be clear, I'm not exactly endorsing Gary Post as a legitimate suspect, but what I am saying is Riverside PD and frankly all of the police agencies did, I think, a very thorough job, a reasonably thorough job in their original investigations. Now, can they be criticized? Certainly. They can be criticized for Mike Morford has pointed out they should have followed up on the James Owens, co-worker. Mike's right about that. They should have followed up on, Helen Axe's sailor boyfriend. No question about that. But they did a pretty good job in terms of like interviewing people, talking to people. Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of mistakes in there in the police report. And there are people like Peggy Ewer who should be seen and not heard. But, it's other than that, I think the police agencies did a very competent job. And Riverside PD, by doing a reconstruction, I think went beyond the call of duty. Okay, um, pretty much everything that happens after the original investigations for police agencies, you might as well be talking to people on Zodiac killer message boards. That's how seriously I would take. I would say the same thing Mike Morford has said about Riverside PD, which is good luck. Um, look, police agencies care about what's coming in the door right now. Okay, so I mean, just that people like myself are concerned with this homicide, concerned in the case of Riverside with a homicide that took place 57 years ago, is all well and good, but that's not what they exist for, and I understand that. Okay, but what the reason I bring it up about Dave is citing what police agencies think about a given suspect, even suspects who I don't take serious, like Gary Allen Post. Who cares what the police agency thinks? Who cares? How many? Do you want me to cite examples of shenanigans by SFPD, for example? Donald Fook talked to the Zodiac killer, and SFPD made absolutely sure that that they never admitted that, and that Fook never admitted that publicly. Okay, but it's a fact. We have the Zodiac saying it. We have Richard Grinnell, if I'm allowed to cite him. Okay, he's absolutely correct. We have Pellicetti. We have the Zodiac himself. We have Eric Zelms' widow. Okay, all saying the same thing, which is it was their understanding that Fook did in fact talk to the Zodiac killer on Jackson Street. And the actions of Fook, as Richard Grinnell has pointed out, back that up. Okay? So, but is SFPD going to admit to that? No. Because the worst thing they could possibly admit to is the most notorious serial killer of the 20th century is still, loose on the landscape because two of their officers let him go. Okay? So allowed him to continue on his way as they made their way to Arguello Boulevard, not down Cherry Street. So for as I said, Dave did very impressive work with Z340 in terms of turning a cipher. That was a tremendous amount of scut work to get what he got. What he got is of dubious value, I would say. Okay, but in a lot of it's like anything else. I mean, a lot of the times, the vast majority of police work that is done to eliminate possibilities. So in that sense, what Dave did is valuable because at least it eliminates the possibility that we were going to get actual information from the plain text of Z340. Okay, but I find I agree that the people who are touting Gary Post are a bunch of goofs, At least in terms of this case, they are. I haven't seen their work, their other work, but while I agree with that, I think citing police agencies to back up that conclusion is silly. So anyway, let's see where I am here. We have oh, it's almost 3 hours. Okay, well, that should be enough to hold you till next time, right? Anyway, as let me reiterate, if I think I've gone on long enough. Let me reiterate that again. If Dave wants to, if Dave he's not going to, but if Dave Oranchak ever wants to debate me on his channel, on neutral ground, on my channel, or if he wants to, comment below, and that's the safest way. If you think you're going to run into Ray Grant, the safest way of getting your points in is just doing down, because the worst thing that can happen to you is I'll just remove your comment. But Dave removed my comments on the other day, so I think it was on Saturday. So what's he afraid of? What, the people are going to come over to my channel? No. I don't know, but he removed 2 comments that I made over there. No, I don't know whether I'm hidden from view now, or whether because I still see 1 comment up. So it's possible he removed the first 2 comments and then pressed the hide from channel button, which would make me think that I'm still being read on the comments section, but nobody else can see me. I don't know. But anyway, as I said, if Dave wants to, if Dave or any of his, Sam Blake or Jarl or all 3 of them want to debate me on any of these subjects, I will be more than happy to do that. If Dave have any response, he's welcome to post it below. Dave has Dave has my email. So, he knows how to get in touch with me if he wants. But like, as I said, if he wants to debate, that's fine. I think a lot of people would be interested, and Dave might actually win the debate, Okay, there's no hope of that, but I mean, maybe, I mean, I think he could probably, I don't know, maybe he might make 1 or 2 minor points, if we debated, he might. I don't know, but anyway, I just thought I knew that sooner or later I was going to do a video on Z340, the solving of Z340, what it means. I think I've pointed out the thing about life is and death in earlier videos. So offhand, I think I pretty much covered everything that Dave. And to be clear, I think Dave's videos are all outstanding. I recommend, if people have not looked at all of them, I think you need to look at all of the Zodiac videos. Not the triathlon videos, but the Zodiac videos on Dave's channel, I think are all worth watching, and they contain a lot of good information. And Dave did a very good job, particularly on the undertext of Z340. So I think some of Dave's videos, I think episode 5, episode 6 also, and some of the other episodes are pretty much on the same level as This is the Zodiac Speaking documentary that was done by David Fincher, and that's very high praise. Okay, I think that's the best documentary done on the case. And I think Dave's videos are right up on that level. So I mean, Dave has done a lot of good work on the case on the cryptography in the case. For those of us who are cryptographically challenged, like myself, okay. However, I think Dave is. Oh, it's out. It's 3 hours. Okay. I think Dave, as I said, I think Dave is dead wrong as far as like what the actual messages go, and also in his profile of the killers. But as I said, I'm dealing with. I've reached a point where I realize I'm dealing with what might as well be religious beliefs, and I don't think I'm necessarily going to change anyone's opinion. So I don't know, but anyway, I thought this might be a good time to talk about these things. And again, if Dave, to reiterate, if Dave or any of the other people who are debating online, Thomas Horan wants to debate me. If Mike Butterfield, he says he'll debate anybody, okay? We'll put that to the test, see if he wants to debate me. Mike Butterfield, if he wants to debate me. Um, uh, uh, I'm willing to debate just about anybody who has an actual name and a face, okay? Not anonymous hobbyists, okay? But if Druser wants to debate me, I'm sure Druser is watching this, so I will be happy to debate him as well. So anyway, I hope I've named this video after Dave. I hope Dave accepts it in the spirit in which it is given. If I said anything that Dave finds, every now and then he gets pissed off when I say something. So if I've said anything that Dave finds insulting, I I'm sorry he feels that way. And but let me know. I mean, if we can debate about my tone of voice if you want. But my voice is doing pretty well actually. So, but anyway, if whoever wants to debate me, here I am. I want to thank everybody for watching the video, and I at some point I really wanted to talk about the cryptography, because the cryptography is what brings people, I believe, what brings people to the case. I think if you remove the cryptography from the case, there wouldn't be anywhere there. I mean, I think this case would still be notorious, but nowhere on the level that it is. It's got that mystery element to it because of the ciphers, okay? And the good news is that a lot of the cipher material is not just contained within the ciphers themselves. They exist throughout the Zodiac project. So anyway, thanks again for watching the video. And don't know what I'm going to do next. I will be as surprised as you are when my next video comes out. But thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.